Before we begin tonight's story, I just want to say thank you for listening to Macabre Horror. If you enjoy my horror narrations, you can also follow the Macabre Horror podcast on Spotify, where I upload new stories regularly. And if you'd like to help support the channel and keep the stories going, you can also join the Patreon. Even following as a free member helps a lot, and there will also be bonus stories and extras for supporters. This will help you stay connected to the channel, regardless of what happens. Now, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin tonight's story. The last thing Mathieu said to me before we went underground was that the bones down there weren't the scary part. I thought that was a funny thing to say. A reassurance that somehow wasn't one. I laughed, he smiled, and we climbed down through the manhole at about 9:15 on a Thursday evening. That was, I'm going to be honest with you, I genuinely don't know how long ago that was. My phone died somewhere in the middle of all this. I'm recording this on my GoPro, and I've got maybe 40 minutes of battery left on it, which is how I know I need to start talking now. So, from the beginning. My name is Tom Kelly. I run an urban exploration channel. Nothing huge, about 60,000 subscribers. Mostly people who like watching me crawl through derelict factories and abandoned hospitals in the UK. The Paris Catacombs have been on my list since I started the channel. The real catacombs, not the tourist section. The cataphile routes. The actual labyrinth underneath the city that most people don't know exists, and that you can absolutely get arrested for entering. Which, look, I knew the risks. I did my research. I've read the accounts. I knew people got lost down there for days. I'm not an idiot. Finding Mathieu took about 3 weeks. There are forums, if you know where to look. Not Reddit though, something more obscure. French language, members only. The kind of place where people are careful about who they talk to. I posted asking if anyone would be willing to guide a British YouTuber through a basic route. I got mostly ignored. A few hostile replies in French that I ran through Google Translate and wished I hadn't. And then, eventually, a message from Mathieu. He was thorough. That's the first thing I'd say about him. He sent me a list of required equipment before he'd even agreed to meet. Waterproof boots, at least 2 torches per person, a chalk marker, water for 6 hours minimum. He was precise about the water. He also told me up front that he didn't want to be on camera, which I respected. A lot of experienced cataphiles are like that. He said I could film the environment, the tunnels, the walls, but he'd be staying out of frame as much as possible. Fine, whatever you need. We met at a cafe near the station 2 hours before we went in. He was maybe late 30s, shorter than I expected from the authoritative tone of his messages. He wore a jacket that had been clearly underground many times, that particular kind of grey that isn't grey by design. He ordered an espresso and didn't make small talk. He just went straight into logistics, which I found deeply reassuring. He spread a hand-drawn map on the table and traced a route with his finger while he talked. He knew exactly where we were going, how long each section would take, where the ceiling dropped, where the water pooled. "If we get separated," he said, and his English was very good, but with an odd formality to it, like he'd learned it from books rather than people. "You follow the whistling. I will always be whistling. You hear it. You walk towards it. Okay?" I said okay. "The tunnels echo strangely," he added. "Do not trust distance. Do not trust direction. Trust the whistling." I said okay again and finished my coffee, and we went. The first thing that hits you is the smell. Not rot. That's what people always say, and it's not quite right. It's more like cold clay and something older underneath it. Mineral and still. The smell of a place that's been sealed away from weather for 2 centuries. The second thing is how quickly the entrance disappears behind you. We went maybe 30 meters along the first corridor, and I looked back and couldn't see the ladder anymore. That's when something in my chest quietly noted that this was actually happening, and perhaps I should pay attention. Mathieu moved confidently. He'd clearly walked these routes enough times that his body knew them, and he narrated as we went in that same book-learned English. He told me about the quarriers who dug the limestone in the 1100s, how the ground beneath Paris had been slowly honeycombed over centuries until the streets above started sinking, how they'd begun moving the bodies from the overflowing cemeteries into the tunnels in 1786, over a period of years. Men carrying bones down by torchlight and stacking them into walls. 6 million or thereabouts. He said thereabouts with a small smile, like the imprecision amused him. The bones are not the scary part, he said again, almost to himself. I was filming everything. The walls, the low ceiling, the floor that was sometimes dry and sometimes had a shallow film of water across it that caught my headlamp and made the passage look like it went on forever in both directions. I was filming because that's what I do, and because having something to point the camera at made the whole thing feel manageable. You have a job to do. You're not just a person standing in the dark under 8 million people's feet. You're working. We'd been down there maybe 40 minutes when I noticed the skull. To be clear, there are skulls everywhere down there. That's not the thing I mean. The walls in certain sections are literally constructed from femurs and skulls arranged in patterns. Decorative borders of bone. And at first, it almost feels aesthetically pleasing. You almost tell yourself it's architecture, until your brain quietly insists that those are heads, and they were once people. And there are 6 million of them, and you're very small. But what caught my eye this time wasn't a wall. It was a skull sitting on the floor of the tunnel, maybe half a meter off to the right, partially behind a ridge in the stone. Not part of any arrangement, just sitting there. I crouched down and picked it up, which in retrospect was probably not something I should have done. It was lighter than I expected. Most of the jaw was gone. There was a crack running from somewhere above the left eye socket down through the cheekbone. An old break, long healed. Healed while the person was alive, I mean. Someone had broken their face badly enough that it showed in the bone, and had recovered, and eventually died and ended up in a tunnel under Paris. I found myself wondering for a stupid moment what the story was. Whether they'd been a fighter, or whether they'd fallen off something. I don't know how long I was looking at it. Long enough that when I stood up and turned around, Mathieu was gone. This happens. I knew this could happen. The tunnels branched constantly, and he'd been moving ahead of me while I'd stopped. And the thing to do right now was not panic. The thing to do was listen. I listened. It took a few seconds, and then I heard it. The whistling. It was echoing and distant, and I genuinely couldn't tell which direction it was coming from. Mathieu had warned me about this, but it was there. A slow, meandering melody, nothing I recognized, just something improvised and tuneless and steady. I put the skull down carefully and started walking towards it. This is the part I keep going over in my head. I followed the whistling for, I want to say 10 minutes, maybe 15. Through 2 branches, down a slope where the ceiling had dropped and I had to bend at the waist. Through a section where the walls closed in enough that my shoulders brushed stone on both sides. The whistling was always there, always just ahead of me. And I kept expecting to turn a corner and find Mathieu standing there looking faintly exasperated. The way a guide looks when their charge has fallen behind to take photos of something. The trouble is, I never found him. At some point, I stopped and called out. I said his name. My voice did something ugly in that space. It multiplied and flattened at the same time. And the echo came back to me in pieces that didn't quite sound like what I'd said. The whistling stopped. Not gradually, not fading like someone moving away. It just stopped, between one note and the next. And the silence it left was the specific silence of something that has heard you. I stood there for a moment. Then I called out again, louder. I said I was lost. I said I needed to find the way out. I said any version of the words that might help. Nothing came back except the echo. And eventually, not even that. I've been walking since then. I've been marking the walls with the chalk like Mathieu told me to, so I can tell if I'm going in circles. And I've been going in circles, but the marks are telling me the circles aren't consistent. There are different branching points, different shapes, which either means I'm misreading the tunnels, or the tunnels are doing something that tunnels can't do. I'm choosing to believe I'm misreading them. That's the interpretation I can work with. I found another skull about an hour ago. I almost didn't look at it. And then I did. Because something about it snagged at me. And I saw that it had a crack running from above the left eye socket, down through the cheekbone. Old break. Long healed. I've been trying to work out a rational explanation for that. Maybe these breaks are common. Maybe it's a type of fracture that happens frequently, and I'm only noticing it now because I'm looking. Maybe the first skull somehow got moved, but that requires someone to have moved it. And the only other person down here is Mathieu. And Mathieu hasn't answered me in, I don't know, a long time. My GoPro's telling me I have about 9 minutes of battery left. I don't think I'm getting out of here tonight. I'm going to keep trying, obviously. I'm going to keep walking. But I want to get this recorded while I still have the light. Here's what I think happened, or the version of it I can bring myself to say out loud. Mathieu told me to follow the whistling. He said he'd always be whistling, and that if I got lost, the whistling would lead me back. He said to trust it. He was very specific and very deliberate. And I've been thinking about whether that was the advice of someone who wanted to keep me safe, or the advice of someone who knew exactly what I'd do when I heard a sound in the dark. I don't know what's down here. I don't know if Mathieu does. Maybe he's lost too. Maybe he's been sitting in some tunnel this whole time, waiting to hear me call out. And the part where the whistling stopped was just coincidence, and I've been catastrophizing in the dark for hours with no reason. That's possible. That's a thing that could be true. But I've been down here long enough that I'm not certain of much anymore. And I think, before the battery goes, I should say this clearly, while I'm still thinking clearly. If anyone finds this recording, and someone will find it eventually, because the GoPro's waterproof and these things last, please don't come down here to look for me. I know that's the thing people say, and I know it never stops anyone, but I'm saying it anyway. Don't come down here. Don't follow sounds you didn't put there. And please, please tell my parents that I love them. Their number's in my phone, but that's dead now. But my channel is Tom Kelly Vlogs, and they'll find me from there. Tell them I wasn't scared. That's not exactly true, but it'll be better for them. Okay, the battery's almost gone. I'm going to keep walking. Thank you for listening to tonight's story. If you enjoyed it and would like to hear more horror narrations, you can follow Macabre Horror on Spotify, where I post new stories regularly. And if you'd like to help support the channel and keep these stories coming, you can join the Patreon. Free memberships are also available, and paid supporters also get access to bonus stories and other extras. All the links are in the description. Until next time, keep the lights low and the doors locked.